Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Infrastructure Network. My name is Chad Smelzer. I'm your host. Today's guest is Dr. Elyse Dub, who's the founder of Insight and Onsite. Thanks for joining me, Elyse.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Chad. Great to be here and to talk about construction, talk about videos, and talk about the interplay between mental health and making videos and
Yeah,
sharing.
yeah.
It's really at the forefront of what I'm doing in my business, again, Insight Onsite, which we help to build a sense of community and culture to really address the nationwide epidemic we have here over stress and work life imbalance. We get people together, we get people talking. I'm a psychologist, as a mental health professional. We facilitate those conversations to help people feel good about themselves.
I love it. We need it. Construction, engineering, we really do need it. Yeah, there's a lot of statistics out there. You probably know much better than I do about the construction
Yes.
industry, but there's a high suicide rate. I think it's like top in
Hmm.
the country. We used to, when I did project managing, and had our crews traveling. They'd spend 2 weeks, 3 weeks in a hotel doing
Right.
construction work, just basically
Hmm.
in sewer systems. And I'm like, well, that's not good for their health, their family. Think about it being gone. And there was a lot of substance abuse for sure
Yes.
in that space. It was pretty wild. But so what made you want to get into like this field?
Well, a number of reasons. I think maybe I'll start as you and I had chatted about off screen. Is My daughter is a budding engineer. She's young. She's in high school, and she's looking to get into this field. And that's what sparked my interest a little bit. When I started digging a bit more, I looked at the mental health statistics, and to me, my business fit in perfectly with some of the changes and innovation regarding how can we address mental well-being within the industry, getting people to talk. That's really what I do. And you pinpointed it with people being on the road, away from their families, not knowing what to do with downtime. Let's get people talking about, how do you handle that? How do you work through that difficulty being away from those that we love? And get people to share their strategies. That is the forefront of the work that I do. And it's what drives me every day, because I do know, and I'm very confident that this work makes a difference in the lives of others.
Yeah, we need it. Like I said, kind of at the beginning there, it's one of those things where it's kind of frowned upon, and mostly with the men in
Hmm.
the industry. Well, I don't need help. I don't need
Hmm.
counseling. I don't need someone to help me, see my well, they don't see their blind spots is the whole point of this
Right.
thing, right? And I'm sure you can, elaborate more on that. But, that's the thing. We don't see what we're seeing. We're around guys, a lot of guys, especially in construction. There's a group of the masculinity that's there. Everybody's all like,
Hmm.
this stigmatism, whatever you
Hmm.
want to call it, that's created. And look, you can't cry, you can't be emotional, you can't show
Right.
feeling. You have to be tough. And
Right.
I hope that we're moving away from that. Back in the day
Hmm.
when I was in my 20s and 30s, it was. I mean, you could be harassed literally, and you would bullied, whatever. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the way it
Yes.
kind of went. Yeah,
Right. And it's part of those, to your point, it's part of those brave conversations. And for some of this work, I always say this may not be about going to see a counselor, going to see a psychologist, which can feel very scary. Let's bring the work within. Let's bring it amongst those groups of individuals, getting people to share. And it doesn't have to be from that super place of vulnerability. It can be, hey, how'd you handle that? So and so's calling you and they're, getting on your case about not being there. Hey, how'd you do that?
yeah,
It can be something that is facilitated by mental health professionals, but it's not us analyzing you and doling out. It's you and your colleagues and those people on site with you. So I think that that's part of really where the important work is. And again, as we talked about, I love this conversation we're diving into today, because what it does is that it opens up the door for sharing through videos and stuff that you know, it opens up that door in a way they may not feel as vulnerable and scary to some. I'm going to put it right out there. It could feel scary to talk about these things in our personal lives. So that's why I love this conversation as a door opener to building relationships in a different kind of way.
Yeah. It's a lot of the what I was thinking about is, you know, time. They're gonna say, well, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to
Mhm.
meet with somebody. But I'm sitting in a hotel room, for example, or I'm sitting, at a bar,
At a
drinking
bar.
some
Mhm.
beer at as soon as work's done, I'm at the bar hanging out with more buddies, getting
Right.
more confirmation of like, my wife or whatever issues I'm not, avoiding at home, things like that. And it just stirs and festers in there. And
Yes.
it's just not a healthy place for them to be, but they have time. They have video,
Right.
they have connections like this, you and I are,
Mhm.
what we're doing that they could, hopefully connect with the facilitator when they need one
Yes.
for schedule points. And how do you, schedule or provide services?
I do exactly that, is that I schedule around the needs of the clients that I have. And sometimes that means scheduling time on site. That's why my business is Insight Onsite. The onsite does not need to be in person, it
Mm,
can be something that's over video. When I do sessions within organizations, especially in the ACE industry, nothing in my world runs over 1 hour,
mm,
because there's a lot of time that you do need to be on your construction sites and whatnot. So when I do this work, I do it consistently and we do it for no more than an hour. And the feedback that I've gotten has been tremendous.
yeah.
Is that I never said these things before, and this is my favorite part of the week, and those kinds of just more offhanded comments. And for some, it takes time. That's why we meet through Inside Onsite. We meet repeatedly. We build those relationships over time. It takes time. It took us time to get here. It's going to
Yeah.
take us time to do something differently too.
Yeah, 100%, because, if I was meeting you for the first time and I was like, at least here's my problems, right? I
Hmm.
don't know you. I'm not going to share all my skeletons in the closet, so to speak, that I've been
Right.
dealing with. I'm going to
Yes.
test you out. I'm going to throw you things I've been thinking about and stuff like that,
Yeah.
throwing some stuff at you. But it takes time for me to get comfortable
It,
enough to release that.
absolutely.
How do you help, kind of guide that conversation?
That's actually a really, really great question. And I'll start with, again, with Insight Onsite, what we really do is that there's a time and a place for therapy. Insight Onsite is not about therapy. We are goal oriented, solution focused. So, what I'll do is based upon the topic of the group, I'll give you two examples that I work on quite a bit. And they're two different ones. One is we talk about stress. And within the stress example, I would get people together and we would talk about over multiple sessions. One session maybe talked about you have less than 10 minutes. What are some of the things that you do? And people start to share a little bit about the stuff that they do. And sometimes some of those strategies, one of my favorite actually is somebody had headphones and they blasted Metallica. This was their thing. And they blasted Metallica through the headphones. And that was a way in which they helped to decompress. Everyone in the group now learned that. I facilitated it. So that would be one example. And then we would talk about some other big things. What are some of the ways in which you've made some lifestyle changes to deal with your stress? We get into other things. So again, this is over multiple sessions, different topics that are facilitated, and we're not going digging deep into those relationships. That may be for some individuals part of what a therapeutic relationship would look like. And in part, some of my role has been is I'm a psychologist. I may not be so scary or I maybe feel normal, especially when I do have those opportunities, which I love to be more on site with people. So Insight On Site can be video, it can be in person. Um, so I think that that's part of it. Or sometimes we do some parenting work. How do you do this? Your significant other, excuse me, may be home and having to deal with bedtime, and then you're hearing it on the other side. How do you handle that? How do you deal with being away from your children? What is it you do and what is it you do? We crowdsource on some in some ways what the ways in which we solve these problems. It's not coming from myself as a psychologist, it's coming from people who understand you and what your day-to-day experience is.
I can tell you many years of sitting in hotel rooms, and I was completely disconnected. And this is not a session for us to go through, but I'm just giving my experience to
Yes,
be,
yes,
to
because that's
relate.
what happens.
Yeah, I emotionally just completely disconnected, and
Mhm.
also from the kids, my kids and stuff like that, because it was me on the road. It was like not intentional. It was just hard to because I'd
Right.
go entertain in evenings, networking events, stuff for business development too. I was doing project management and business development, so doing both.
Mhm.
You're at trade shows, your business, building relationships. You're gone. You're influenced. You're in front of a ton of you know
Right.
people and opportunities and stuff like that, and you can very get distracted and disconnected from your family when you're out there.
Right.
That's for sure. Yeah, it's
Right. So sharing those and swapping those stories, the
yeah,
storytelling about how different people do it in light of what those really real constraints are upon your time.
yeah, yeah. How do
That's
you?
that's the
Oh, sorry.
power.
That
Yep.
is the power.
Mhm.
Do you connect? Do you find more success in groups, just getting groups together,
Mhm.
and similarities, obviously, types of construction, engineering, whatever, versus like individual?
For me, the whole basis of my business is really working in groups. Again, there's a role and a place for doing that individual work. It's not necessarily work that we do regularly with Insight Onsite because we're looking to build that peer support
Hmm.
within at the site. So that's not, we don't do as many individual, and sometimes I would refer some of that out. And that happens often, and I'm glad that you brought it up because for some things, people make differentiations, what they would share within the group, and some of the stuff that they may need to work on a little bit deeper. And I'm often asked to make referrals for providers that do more therapeutic work in that regard to work with
Hmm.
somebody individually.
Yeah, that's important to have options, and
Mhm.
just being accessible to those opportunities, or connections, I should say, I
Yes.
guess is what I'm getting
Yes.
at.
Right.
Yeah. And how are how are we using technology now to help? Like, how are you using like video to have these
Mm.
conversations, and how are we looking at technology to help maybe down the road help us organize data, I guess, from
Mhm.
these different interactions we're having with people? As a psychologist, what's that look like?
Right. So I think that that's a multifaceted question that I'm going to
Yeah.
try and break down a
It's
little
loaded.
bit. There is absolutely a time and a place for AI. The same way as I just described, there's a time and place for therapy, there's a time and a place for the peer support. This is all falling under the mental health umbrella. So I think that on some ways in which the AI component comes in with mental health are the various different apps that people can use to have those kinds of daily check ins. That's where I see within the mental health industry this kind of work going. And with a lot of resistance, I know amongst my colleagues around what that looks like, the data is looking really positively. And it's stuff outside of what I can do or what one individual can do. We need that supplement to have some of those more kinds of daily check ins. And that's a great place down the line where that works in terms of the videos. And I know we're going to talk through that as well. One of the pieces that I see in terms of the technology is we have all these platforms. We have Zoom, we have Google Meets, we have various other kinds of platforms. That's places where we can meet and have those conversations. Um, and for some people, that's really a preference over doing this in person. And again, we look to meet people where they are and to recognize too this work in mental well-being is not a one size fits all. That's number one. And there are many different ways to address the pieces, especially in the construction industry when you have rates that are of suicidality that are really hard, that are really high, anxiety, depression, and being away from the family, as we've been talking about quite a bit. So, this is one piece of a much, much bigger puzzle. And I think that that's a really, really important piece. Mental health does not always mean therapy.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm glad we transitioned that because I wasn't sure when I was going to do that, but it worked out really well. And you picked it up really really good when I said data intelligence or whatever.
Yes.
But that's kind of the thing, right? Is like I think my audience is in the 20s and 30s and 40s mostly,
Mhm.
and we're in that world. It's coming, AI, in that conversation.
Mhm.
And video technology is ever since 2020 we've exploded virtually in having more interactions now.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
people are on their phones all the time now. We're using video, we're using connection, social media, all these ways to stay connected. I
Mhm.
think the AI component that you're kind of referring to is having it can't have at least all day long, right? I
Mhm.
would love to have you by my side. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Check my blind spots. I
Right,
want to make
right, right.
self-aware. Am I doing things right?
Mhm.
Luckily, I married a
Mhm.
coach, so I kind of have that. But
Exactly,
still,
in-house.
as if we could have you and replicate you 24/7, that would be a huge advantage. Now, I'm not
Right.
saying that's where we're going to go, but I mean, it'd
Mhm.
be nice to have a tool where if you're sitting in your hotel room, you're struggling and you need some advice or you need some education from someone like you, they could easily grab the phone. They're already on it anyway, scrolling
Mhm.
TikToks or whatever. Why not
Right.
use it for education on yourself? Make yourself self-aware. I think technology is going to really push us that way in the future.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, it's one of the many prongs. I really can't stress this enough. It's one of the prongs of where this mental health work is going. And even, you mentioned something about the start of COVID. I remember I had been working virtually in really a hybrid manner for many years
Mhm.
prior to COVID. And I remember my colleagues, when we were sitting around this group of mental health professionals, like, I can't do this work. I can't do this work virtually. I can't. And we leaned into it and people did it, which is amazing. And now this is the next part of that, is realizing, to your exact point, that these apps are here to stay and it's one part of the puzzle. It's one aspect of a relationship. It's one way in which to get the feedback. But also simultaneously, what I do differently is I help to build connection and relationships and culture. And that happens differently with
Yeah.
people, but there's room for all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, look, you see what's happening in America. America's going through an AI revolution in the next 5 years. It's
Mhm.
happening now.
Absolutely.
Data centers are going to need to be built. Infrastructure is going to need to be built. There's going to be a lot more construction, engineering requirements. It's going to be a massive boom for sure because
Mhm.
there's so much money driving it now.
Yes.
So I can see where construction is going to be needing services like yours.
Mhm.
Insight Out Onsite is going to be great. It's going to be an offer, and then as we add technology components to it,
Yes.
it's really going to provide more value to the people that need it the most, right? The ones
Absolutely.
doing the construction on the road, away from their families, all that stuff, right?
Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
And we think about that and, the relationships are the backbone of society. When we, take a st I always try and take a step back, and there's been data out of Harvard for years and years and years, all different walks of life. This is the backbone of society. And when we start to really dig in and when we start to build those relationships, we start to feel full. We start to feel better about ourselves. And one of the pieces that I think about a lot and comes up in the work that I do are that feeling of isolation, the feeling of loneliness. That's a huge piece, but you feel connected, you feel better. That impacts error
Yeah.
on site. It impacts your productivity, it impacts your engagement, it impacts your attention, and we can go on with building those relationships and what it does for you at work, but then also the relationships helps your life outside of work and being connected to others.
Yeah. Just and just a real quick, how I connect with my kids is through gaming.
Mhm. Mhm.
Literally, we
Right,
build relationships now through game. That's where they're at. That's where they are.
right.
Fortnite, whatever, the different games they have. So I have to meet them where they're at, and you can do that virtually. Like you
Yes.
can do it if I was traveling. I could still connect with them, play the video games, talk to them on the phone while I'm
Mhm.
playing, and still keep that relationship going. So there's ways to do it.
Absolutely, and I love how you frame that. You meet people where they are. And that's such a crucial part because you're listening, you are looking from their perspective as what it is that they're enjoying, and you are meeting them there.
Yeah. It's amazing what
And
it
that
does.
can be done on the road. And I love how you also made that point as well. This can be done anywhere at any time.
Yeah, it's huge. It's just got to be creative and learn how to leverage it so that you can provide and connect with your family as best you can while you're
Right.
gone and traveling. Yeah.
Right, right, and now
So,
you've just offered this awesome recommendation to your listeners out there that they may not have thought about as a way of
yeah.
connecting. It doesn't need to be on the phone, FaceTime, or whatever it is. It can look real differently, and that's part of
Yeah.
what these conversations are all about, getting us
Yeah.
all to think.
Yeah. Good stuff. Let's talk
Yeah.
about the video side of this now. There's
Yes.
fears associated with video, the technology and the vulnerability, let's
Mhm,
start with there. Like talk about that for the next 10 minutes or so. What do you mean? You and I had a conversation and
mhm.
these kind of conversations, this is what's been brought up. So what are you meaning by that?
Okay, I have a couple of different things on this, and I'll share a little bit about myself. I have resisted doing video for Insight Onsite for a really long time. And
Okay.
I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And I'm realizing that it's a way to build my business and to build my business for the future. So I know within the construction industry, there's definitely some concern about video. And I'm going to talk about video in terms of getting people comfortable. And perhaps acting upon some of that vulnerability. And that could be video around learning new skills. And I
Mm,
know that the lawyers in the room are probably going to be up in arms with me saying this. That's obviously something to be worked out with legally. But when there's video, it can be the foundation of that vulnerability because you're on video, but we're doing videos with skills and tasks that you know how to do.
yeah.
Right. So this could be somebody who is seasoned in doing some work, teaching somebody who's newer. It can spark intergenerational conversations. Younger generations, 20s, 30s, they are communicating through video, they are
All video.
communicating visually. And what I love about video is if you take some task and you can break it down into small pieces, then that video can be available to watch over and over and over again. And that's how we learn new skills. That's why think about apprenticeships. It's over and over and over again that we're doing things with the creation of video, especially within the construction industry. Somebody can watch this over and over and over again to help hone in those skills in a very necessary way that's self guided, and yet you enable communication in a whole new way. And then some of that sometimes can, again, create the basis for groups like mine, if somebody's not there already, where you talk about other things. It's all part of that stepping stone with mental well being.
Yeah. Love it. Now this is, wow. I could have taken, I want to take this conversation in so many directions right now. I'm going to start one thing in the trades of construction, right? Let's think about the old
Hmm.
ways where it was like, hey, you need to go out and be an apprentice. You need to work on the job site. You need to learn from you
Hmm.
know, the institutional knowledge of the guys who've been doing it for 20, 30 years. And I was recently just talking to a public works director who left organizations because they restricted his growth of wanting to operate heavy equipment for like a backhoe or, just a dump
Hmm.
truck, stuff like
Right.
that. And they were
Mhm.
teaching, they told him, they were like, hey man, no, that's not, it's a hierarchy. You work your way up slowly. And he's a very driven person. He's like, I just
Hmm.
want to learn. Video or virtual reality is coming. Like
Yes.
it's going to come to the trades where you
Hmm.
might have a young person, and
Hmm.
why do we have to restrict them at a level based on, where they're at? They're going to leave and go somewhere else. You're going to lose
Hmm.
valuable employees,
Right.
anyway. My point is like we could start using, instead of restricting them, maybe giving
Hmm.
them the tools like video, virtual reality to
Hmm.
like learn how
Hmm.
to operate it. Maybe don't take the risk, run them out in the parking lot. It's like driver's ed for my kids. It's like I take
Yes.
them out and drive them around. You got to give them time, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, I just wanted to kind of bring that up because I think it's important that we look at video in so many different ways, not just this where we interact, but also how
Hmm.
we use it in construction in the future.
Absolutely, and that's in construction, that's really across industries where we're using that virtual reality. I'm so glad you mentioned that as well, in addition to video, to help. I always look at it to prime people who want to upskill, who people who wanna learn a different skill, people who wanna go in that hierarchy. It is not a replacement for doing that live in a more apprenticeship situation, but at least what not at least then what happens is that you start to learn, you come in at a different level.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then that's where the human interaction happens on a more critical thinking level about the skills that you're working on.
And Jake, think about this that I just thought about
Mhm.
the leadership that has restricted that employee mentally, thinking that, oh, you don't deserve it, you don't want to move up. They need to have you
Mhm.
in their life to help guide them through
Right.
that egotistical kind of, that
Mhm.
stereotype, that's out there
Right.
for for control or whatever it is. We don't want you to get better than me kind of mindset that's
Yeah.
out there,
Mhm.
especially in construction. It's pretty
Right,
wild.
and in my opinion, in my professional opinion, that's exactly what this is. You have somebody who's motivated to do this work on their own through a VR system or some type of videos, and then that's where you come in. You, as the seasoned individual, still come in because you have this expertise, because you see the nuance, and
Yeah.
that's where your skills really come in. So it's actually shining a light on who you are. It's actually feeding your ego because then you are able to address more challenging skills
Yeah. And
and
that's a
pivot.
reskill though. That's a mindset change. So
Mhm.
you have to get somebody to look at those blind spots for you to
Yes.
really get out of that, to really grow in
Mm,
your career and your future. Because if you sit there and you fester in it and you're like, oh, Jim's doing VR, he's gonna outpace me or outlearn this backhoe operation and I'm gonna lose my job or whatever.
right.
That mindset that's there gotta go. You gotta move.
Mhm. Out the
Yeah.
door. Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be
Absolutely.
interesting. See where all this
Agreed.
all goes. Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed.
So, we have a couple more minutes, and
Mhm.
obviously, you and I can talk probably for hours. Um, when we talk about engineering and we talk about where video is going, you mentioned your daughter,
Mhm.
and what's that look like for maybe introverts, and people that don't want to use the video? Like, where are we going with it? Do you think, or how do we change that mindset?
Right. So I think that with the introverts part of it, what I feel the video does is that it provides a framework
Mm,
for sometimes introverts. It may be hard potentially to think about what to say or to think about how to ask about certain things. But when we prime with video experiences, and be that virtual reality, be it regular video, now all of a sudden you've provided them in their own space to have some of those questions. And sometimes, as a leader, what you can do for somebody that's going to be using one of these systems, you could say, okay, come out with 3 questions, and that's where the mentorship can really, really happen. What are the 3 questions you have? Now, somebody who's feeling a little bit more introverted, a little bit more reticent, they can come out. There's a clear goal in mind. And what I would say regarding those questions, have them framed around the what and the how.
mm,
Then you
yeah,
end up starting conversations, and those conversations really flow. And it's a win-win on both sides. You're building relationships, you're sharing knowledge, and you have been given a framework to share some of that vulnerability around what you don't know.
yeah. I get it often where I get people on a podcast, and it's their first time and they're
Mhm.
so nervous about it, right? And I get it. It's not easy. I'm an
Mhm.
extrovert, so it's easy for me, and I've been in sales and
Right.
business development, so I can handle anything. I feel at this point, but uh,
Mhm.
but the point is like they come to me now. The different civil engineers I'll use for an example. They're like, I want to build my business, consulting business. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, great. You need to start building your brand. How are you gonna do that? Well, you got
Yeah.
to get on video. Like you have nowadays, everybody's scrolling through social media. They want
Mhm.
stories, they want experiences, they want to see your face, they want to build credibility, they want to build trust.
Mhm.
And if you can't provide that, how am I as a public works director, for example, who wants to build projects with you potentially,
Right.
gonna know you if they don't see you now, right? Because you're calling on the phone or you're emailing
Mhm.
or they're
Mhm.
still, they don't see you, and it takes you 50 times before you actually get a meeting potentially with them, right? Where
Yes.
video is a game changer
It's
for
a
the
game
world.
changer, and again, I can't reiterate this enough. It's one tool in the toolbox, and with
Yeah.
people being nervous about being on podcasts and not wanting to do the video, I am so with you. I've been on many podcasts. I still get nervous every single time, and it's part of the human experience that we lean into that nervousness. We're never going to be stress-free. We are never not going to be nervous, and we're never not going to feel that unease. And that's part of what motivates us to do these things that are so incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Lean into it, not away from it.
Yeah, 100%. We're gonna make mistakes. I'm notorious for making
Absolutely.
mistakes. I say a word and my wife's like, "What did you say there?" And I'm like, "Biasness," and that's not even a word or whatever. She was like, "You don't say that's not a word," and I was like, "Oh, well, my
Right,
bad." It happens. You just
right,
gotta take it. I mean, it's just
right.
like it's life. We make mistakes. We're humans, right? So,
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely, and once I know for me personally, once I put that content out there, I'm like, "Oh, thank God I did it," and I literally feel I wanna take the rest of the day off because I feel that sense of accomplishment, but I also know that it's a part of a process, and that's how we keep going, and so you
okay,
pat yourself on the back, and that's an important part of this too. This work may feel really, really uncomfortable, and there are strategies and ways to do it, but one of the big things, you do something that you've been putting off, that you've been putting on the back burner, making video, engaging with virtual reality, posting content, whatever that is, pat yourself on the back afterwards because you did it.
I
You
love
didn't
this.
say, oh, I'm going to do it. You did it. Big difference.
Big difference. And, an audio podcast versus a video podcast, two separate things. And I
Hmm.
think, as the future of the generations move forward, it's going to be video focused.
Yes.
Audio is great, but I see it already where video is going to become more dominant. People want to see you. They want to see how you move, your facial expressions, all this different stuff,
Right.
the interactions between other humans. It's social. Why do we? And it's funny. I was just thinking about this.
Hmm.
My wife and I will go to like a restaurant and we'll people watch. People want to
Hmm.
people watch. Think about it that way.
Hmm. Right.
That's where video
Right.
plays a big role. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's the way in which we learn about other people, is through this type of visual. And I always say, somebody who's worked for myself, I've worked in learning for a really, really long time. And I like to pair so we can have like a multi-sensory experience. You see the person, you hear the person, you may watch some of their movements. That all becomes multi-sensory. And that's the way in which we learn, and we learn best.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. Video, you can watch it. You can read the captions. You can hear it. It's
Yes,
sensory right there.
absolutely.
And you can retain 95% is what some of the statistics are about that, video, how
Right,
powerful it is. And then
right.
another thing is it's like 66,000 times faster than text, reading text. They've
Absolutely.
processed
And
it.
when we think about even learners, going back to it, I think the numbers are hovering somewhere around 65% that people have become more visual learners. I
Mm,
think personally that that's a function of how we are communicating. I remember years ago, um, a client said to me, this generation communicates visually, where in
yeah.
prior generations, we would just communicate on paper.
Yeah. Yeah. Writing letters,
Writing
postcards, things like
letters,
that. Yeah.
exactly, postcards, or
Who does
we
that?
that's nobody anymore, that's for sure, but this is how they are communicating, this is the way in which, and this is where a lot of us need to pivot. And
Yeah.
it's not easy. It's not easy, but there's definitely ways to do it and steps to take. And this is a lot of what we talk about at Insight Onsite, about how to go about doing that and confronting what is scary and what feels stressful and what feels overwhelming. This is the kind of stuff we're talking about.
Love this, Elise. We need another couple hours and we'll do another one
Amen.
for sure.
Absolutely. I'd love to. This was fun.
This is
Scary
very
and
fun.
fun.
There you go. That's part of the whole process, and growth mindset and getting
Yes,
uncomfortable and doing podcasts and having these conversations because we want to help other people. And that's our goal. So
absolutely.
very good stuff.
Absolutely.
How can people get a hold of you?
Okay, they can reach me at my website at www.insightonsite.com. www.insight, INSIGHT, onsite, ONSITE.org, or they can find me on LinkedIn or on Instagram. Again, Insight Onsite, INSIGHT, ONSITE.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Elise, for joining the
Thank
show.
you. All right. This was
We'll talk to
great.
you
Thanks
soon.
again.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Infrastructure Network.